I want to welcome you all to this webinar on how to prepare for the paper-based TOEFL test. And listen carefully, you are allowed to take notes during this webinar. Actually, I encourage you to take notes during this webinar. But here's a good place for me to answer one of the poll questions that we asked you. Are you allowed to take notes during the paper-based TOEFL test? The answer is no, absolutely not. Do not take notes during the paper-based TOEFL test, because any marks that you make on the booklet or anywhere where you're not allowed to write will be considered an act of cheating, and your scores may be canceled, all right? So you are allowed and encouraged to take notes during this webinar, but do not take any notes during the paper-based TOEFL test. Deal? All right. Okay. All right, so let me tell you a few things about me. First, my name is Boryana Emery, and I am a language instructor at the English Language Institute of the American University in Bulgaria, where I have worked for 15 years. So this is just a little bit about me, so you know what my background is, where I come from, and how I know anything about the TOEFL test. I teach classes in the University Preparatory Program, which is a series of intensive courses designed to bring people to an advanced academic level of English. For more information, please go check out www.aubg.edu/ELI. You're seeing it on your screen right now. This is the address where you can go and find out a little bit more about our University Preparatory Program. It's a wonderful program that is designed to help students take their college entrance tests and become American University in Bulgaria students, okay? So there's a detailed description of the academic program, of the content, how you enroll, any deadlines. We can answer any questions you have. And so please go read a little bit about us. I'll tell you a little bit more about the program later, all right? One more thing, you need to know that the tips and strategies that you will hear in the presentation are part of the training that we offer the students in our program. So the whole presentation gives you an idea about what we do. Now, there's something that I'd like to share with you all that you are not going to see on your screen, and these are the typical problems that students who enroll in our program have. These are problems that the students who come to our program to prepare for the TOEFL test have. These are the typical problems, and some of you may have the same problems. So here they are. You're not going to see this on your screen, but I'd like to share it with you. So there are 4 problems that I'd like to address here real quick. The first, number 1 problem that our students have is that they don't have enough English. My friends, don't be deceived. If you don't know enough English, taking the TOEFL test or any other college entrance test is going to be a challenge. The TOEFL test goes up to C1 level. It's between B1 and C1. So students who take the TOEFL test should have an upper intermediate level English, possibly advanced, but you can do okay with a very strong upper intermediate level of English. So number 1 problem, students don't have enough English. Problem number 2, even if students have studied English for a while, some of them simply do not have enough experience with English. They have studied the grammar rules, they've read the readings in the books, but they really haven't communicated in English with native speakers or even non-native speakers who speak English, and that's the only way to communicate with them. It is a problem when students don't have enough experience with the language in their own personal lives and they're trying to take the TOEFL test. Another problem, students simply are not familiar with the TOEFL test. They don't know what's on the test. And that's a bit of a paradox, because you're trying to take a test, you want to do well, but you don't even know what its contents are. And that's a shame, truly. It is a problem. And problem number 4, students who are trying to take the TOEFL test, even if they are familiar with the content, they simply have no strategy on how to take the test. They don't know what to do. They just throw themselves at it and they hope for the best. Guys, that's not very smart. So in this presentation, I hope to help you a little bit so that you can be a little more prepared for the paper-based TOEFL test that you're about to take. So here's the question that you're probably asking yourself. How do I prepare for the TOEFL test? Okay, well, I have a secret. Actually, I have two secrets to share with you, okay? And this is the key that I hope will unlock the test for you and help you in the future. Here are my two secrets, okay? First, learn English. Okay, I know that's funny. I'm not trying to be funny. You have to learn English. All right, now, I know you can't learn English between now and and the TOEFL test that you're going to take. That's not possible, but I'm not being funny. I promise I'll explain what I mean in a little bit. But secret number one, learn English. If you're good at English, you're going to do spectacularly on the TOEFL test. Secret number two, the second secret, prepare for the test. And I know that's a funny answer. How do I prepare for the test? Well, you have to prepare for the test. But guys, listen to me. You have to actually prepare for the test so you can take it, okay? Prepare for the actual TOEFL test. So these are the two main points that I'm making with this presentation. Now I'll explain what I mean with each one. First of all, what do I mean when I say learn English? You have to understand, guys, the paper-based TOEFL test is not a general education test. It is a test of English as a foreign language. So just because you're an excellent student at school and you have good grades, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're prepared for the TOEFL test, because this is a test of English. It's not a test of how good of a student you are, all right? So you have to keep that in mind, okay? Learning English is actually a slow and gradual process. What I mean is that if you haven't gone through that slow process, if you haven't spent enough time with the language, you're probably not quite ready for the TOEFL test yet. So you need to have realistic expectations from yourself. Learning English actually takes time. If you are a beginner at English, if you've just started learning the language, this may not work for you right now, okay? Learning a language is a time-consuming process. It takes dedication. If you think that you can just learn the language from just listening to songs or watching DVDs or videos and films or, you know, chatting on the internet, that's not what it takes. It actually takes sitting down, dedicating time and energy to the language so you can be good at it. And of course, it takes effort. It is hard work. Sometimes you have to sit so long that, okay, you need to get up and stretch and you forget to eat and drink because you've studied so hard. It does take discipline. It means that sometimes you want to do other things. You want to go out with your friends. You want to check your Facebook page, but you actually have studying to do. So you have to actually use the strength of your will to study the language. And finally, it takes exposure. To be good at the language means that you have been actually exposed to the language, you've had experience with the language, you've used it to communicate with other people, native speakers or non-native speakers. But you've used the language in a variety of contexts to talk about things that interest you, to talk about school, to talk about interesting subjects. If you didn't have it, or if you haven't had exposure, it will be difficult to do well on the TOEFL test. So you need to be realistic. But English also, I have to tell you, it opens doors. This is the language of opportunity. I can't tell you how many opportunities are going to come your way simply because you speak English well. It's going to be an exciting adventure. You'll see how all of a sudden you have all of these opportunities because your English is good. People look at you differently when they see that you speak the language so well. They want to get to know you and they want to give you opportunities because you've impressed them with your language. Certainly, English changes lives. Now, have no doubt about that. I think you can tell by my name. I'm a Bulgarian married to an American, and I teach English for a living. It has transformed my life. I can honestly say I'm a better person because of English, and it's a wonderful opportunity. Finally, English gives you a passport to the world. Have no doubt you will be able to go places and meet people because you know English well. I've experienced it, I've been there. All of a sudden, because of your level of English, you will see how you have more opportunities to go places and do things. including come to Bulgaria and study at the American University in Bulgaria, of course. That's a given. Okay, now a little more about learning English and knowing English. Here are a few basics. You must know the grammar. I'm sorry, there's no two ways about this. If you're serious about taking the TOEFL test, you need to know the grammar of English. So I would like to show you something. It will show up on your screens in a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a like, wow, okay? These are, what you're going to see on your screens are the typical topics that you see on the TOEFL test. I would like you to think of them as the building blocks of English, okay? These grammar topics are all on the TOEFL test, and they're all part of the language. You can't go around them, okay? You can't do without them. They're very important. They're the foundation of the language. So you'll see on your screens topics like noun and noun phrases, nouns and noun phrases, verbs and verb phrases, verb patterns, participles, relative clauses and articles, emphatic inversion, parallel structure, subject clauses. All of these topics are on the TOEFL test. All of these grammatical constructions are on the TOEFL test. Now, why am I showing you all of this? Here's what you need to know. Students who have studied and learned these constructions easily identify them on the TOEFL. That's it. If you've studied these grammatical constructions, even if you don't know the name, like fronting or cleft sentences, even if you don't know the name, if you have studied them and you have learned them, you will very easily identify them on the TOEFL test. And that's the whole idea. The idea is for you to identify these constructions, okay? They should look familiar to you. Like, for example, when I say comparison, you should know comparative and superlative adjectives. You should also know the double comparative, like the higher the level, the harder the language, okay? Or agreement. Now, you may not identify the topic right away, but perhaps you know that there's something called noun agreement. You know, students want to be teachers. Students don't want to be a teacher, right? Okay, so these are important. You have to know the grammar constructions of English. You should have been exposed to them. They should be familiar to you. Another thing that is important is that you must understand the nature of English. That's a basic, okay? When I talk about the nature of English, I mean a couple of things. First, the subject-verb relationship in English. The subject-verb relationship in English, friends, is the heart of the clause. If you understand the subject-verb relationship in English, it means that you understand the noun and the noun phrase, you understand the verb and the verb phrase and their relationship, you understand tenses, you understand active and passive voice, you get the language. In English, the subject and the verb are inseparable. If you want to make a meaningful chunk of sentence, you have to start with the subject and the verb. And I tell you what, they always go together. They're inseparable, and they're the greatest love story of the English language, okay? If you understand that relationship, then you understand English, okay? Another important aspect of English are the collocations, which is the natural combinations of words. These are the natural combinations of words. Now, my students, I have students all the time who study the most difficult and obscure words, and they think that knowing words means knowing English. Folks, it's not true, okay? More than learning words, more important than learning words is knowing which words like each other or one another and which words do not like one another. I tell you what, some words like other words better than others, okay? I mean, some words go together better than other words, okay? So just because you know one word and another word doesn't mean that when you put them together, you get a meaningful language, okay? A meaningful piece of language. So collocations is a basic in language learning. And one more thing, to understand the nature of the language also means you understand the logic of the language. What does that mean, the logic? It means that you get it. You get it. It's not Martian to you. Mars, like the planet Mars, you know, it's not an alien language to you. I have students who look at English as if it's some dark, strange creature and they're just scared of it. I mean, it makes them afraid. No, guys. When you understand the nature of English, you don't look at it funny, okay? It is familiar. It is like coming home to you, okay? And finally, here's a very, very important basic aspect of learning English. You must know how to use a dictionary. Now, my friends, your dictionary is your best friend, and I can prove it to you, all right? It is, I mean, it has all the essential characteristics of a good friend. It is always there for you. It is very reliable. It never walks away from you, never lies, always tells you the truth. It helps you in difficult moments, and it gets you out of trouble. So that's it. There you go. Your dictionary is your best friend, and no serious student of the language can call themselves a serious student of the language if they don't use a dictionary on a regular basis. I mean, I tell you, your dictionary is your best friend, so learn to use it if you haven't already. And to help you out a little bit, I'm going to recommend a few dictionaries to you. They'll be on your screen shortly. Merriam-Webster, you can check the link here. They're free and they're online. Merriam-Webster is the preeminent American dictionary, excellent dictionary with wonderful thesaurus, synonyms and antonyms, origins of words, whatnot. It's a wonderful American dictionary. Of course, the Oxford Dictionary, the mother of all dictionaries. This is the classic standard dictionary of English. If a word is not in the Oxford English Dictionary, then it doesn't exist, right? So this is the fundamental dictionary of all dictionaries. And of course, the Cambridge dictionaries are wonderful. I think they give probably the easiest to understand definitions. Any one of these three, or all of them, are good to use. Please, please learn to use a dictionary. Dictionaries help you tremendously. Okay, moving on now to the next part of this presentation. This is the second point I'd like to make to you, to prepare for the test. So here's what I mean when I say that you need to prepare for the test. Number one, to prepare for the test, you must learn the components of the paper-based TOEFL test. You must learn the components of the paper-based TOEFL test. So on your screens, you will see the components of the paper-based TOEFL test. So I'd like to go over them with you so that you will know, okay? The paper-based TOEFL test has 3 sections. Section 1 is the listening comprehension. Section 2 is the structure and written expression, which is the grammar. And section 3 is the reading comprehension. Let me tell you what's in each one. It's also on your screens. I'll just go read what's on your screen and explain a little bit. Let's start with section 1, which is the listening comprehension section. It has 3 parts: part A, part B, and part C. Part A are the short conversations. You hear 30 short conversations. In part B, you hear longer conversations, 2 longer conversations. And in part C, you hear 3 lectures and talks. The whole listening section takes about 40 minutes to do on the actual TOEFL test, about 40 minutes, and you answer a total of 50 questions. It really goes fast because you hear everything on a recording and you follow the directions on the recording. So that's the first 30 to 40 minutes of the TOEFL test. Then immediately after that, you move on to section 2. There are no breaks on the paper-based TOEFL test. You move to section 2. They're always in this order, so nothing ever changes in the order here. Section 2 is the structure and written expression section. There are 2 parts in it as well. Questions 1 through 15 are called structure, and this is where you have sentences with blanks. They're incomplete sentences, and you have to figure out what goes in the blank. These are the first 15 sentences in this section. Questions 16 through 40 are called written expression, and this is where you do error identification. You have 25 sentences with 4 parts in them underlined, and you have to identify where the error is. The second section, section 2, takes 25 minutes. You have 25 minutes to complete it, and you answer 40 questions. And that's it. It's strictly grammar. It's a wonderful section, my favorite. All right, section 3. Again, immediately after section 2 is section 3, no breaks. Section 3, the reading comprehension. There are 5 passages of 350 words each. and you answer about 10, on average, 10 questions per passage. You have 55 minutes. 55 minutes, it's a fixed time, 55 minutes to do this section, and you answer a total of 50 questions. So that's the TOEFL test. These are the components of the TOEFL test. You never have to research this question again. You already know the components of the TOEFL test. So let's move on. What else is necessary for you to prepare for the test? Number two, now that you know the format, the contents of the test, you need to understand the directions. And that's pretty important. To understand the directions, you have to ask yourselves two questions. First, what am I asked to do? And second, the second question you have to ask yourself is, what do I do exactly? Now, to answer the first question, what am I asked to do? You read the directions. That's the answer to the question. You read the directions. So, in the next several slides, I'm going to do this for you. I will read the directions to you so that you will be familiar with the directions. And then I'll also answer the second question for you. What do I do exactly? I understand the directions, but what do I do? So, not only am I going to read the directions to you, to answer the second question, I will give you one or two major tips on what to do exactly during the TOEFL test to complete the tasks. Now, please understand, people write books about these things. Have you seen the TOEFL preparation books? They're like 1,000 pages long. So you have to forgive me. I can only give you one or two tips to help you out with the TOEFL test. So next, I'm going to read and explain the directions to you, and I will also give you the tips that I have prepared for you. Hopefully they'll be helpful for the TOEFL test. This is the best I can do, and I think all of these tips are really tips you can master, learn in the time you have between now and the actual TOEFL test you take. So we're going to start with section 1, which is the listening comprehension section. I'm going to read to you the directions for part A. You will also see them on your screens. I need to tell you that there are some words and phrases that are in bold in the directions. Don't worry about those. It's not like that on the TOEFL test. I did that for you to point out to you the important things in the directions. So I will not comment. I will simply read them for now because, my friends, here's what I want to do for you. Really, you never read directions on the test. You understand? Okay? You read the directions before the test, and then you never read them again. So I want to do this for you during this short webinar. I'd like to read the directions to you so you have heard them at least once, and maybe you'll never have to read them again. You certainly don't do it during the test. So here we go. Here are the directions for part A in the listening comprehension section. Directions. In part A, you will hear short conversations between two people. After each conversation, you will hear a question about the conversation. The conversations and questions will not be repeated. After you hear a question, read the 4 possible answers in your test book and choose the best answer. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. That's it. Clean and simple. So here's a bit of an explanation. You're going to hear 30 short conversations. Now, guys, when I say short, they are short. Each conversation takes a few seconds. And if you're not on top of them, you're going to miss parts of the conversations, and it's really going to mess you up. Okay, so these conversations are super short, a few seconds each, which means that you have to be very focused. You have to pay attention and basically have to get into a rhythm, which leads me to my tip, okay? Here's my tip for part A, short conversations. I really have only one tip, but I have a lot of explanation that goes with it. Okay, to be able to manage 30 short conversations, you have to follow a series of actions to get into a rhythm. You have to follow a series of actions to get into a rhythm. That will help you stay focused and not miss any part of these short, a few seconds long conversations, okay? So here's what I mean. okay? I will have the whole series of steps on your screens, and I'll go down the list with you, okay? Okay, so first step, you have to listen to the opening lines of the conversation, okay? You can't be fumbling around and sharpening your pencil or looking at the people around you or marking answers or you cannot be doing anything while you're listening to the opening lines of the conversation, because the opening lines provide the topic for you. They provide the context of the conversation. You cannot understand the response of the second speaker if you don't know what they're talking about, all right? So it is very important for you to listen to the first part of the conversation to understand what they're talking about. Then the second step in the series of actions you take is to listen to the response. Because, guys, the response most often contains the answer to the question that the speaker is going to ask, okay, after the conversation. So it's very, very important that you stay focused here and listen to the response, because the response is where the answer to the question is. And we're coming to the third step, which I find the essential step in the whole series of actions here. As soon as you hear the response of the second speaker, you need to try to paraphrase that response. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean, okay? To paraphrase means you have to answer this question. What does the speaker say in other words? So you hear the response. As soon as you hear it, don't do anything else. Don't look at your answer sheet. Think about what the speaker is saying in other words, okay? And of course, guys, I'll give you an example. For example, in the response, you may hear idiomatic expressions. Like, for example, the speaker says, "You can say that again." What does that mean in other words? It means that the person who says that is agreeing with the other speaker, okay? It means, "I agree with you. You can say that again." Or in the response, you may hear phrasal verbs, like the person who makes the response says, "They put off the meeting. Didn't you know they put off the meeting?" Okay, you hear this phrasal verb. As soon as you hear it in your head, you need to go, "They put off the meeting? What does that mean in other words?" Well, it means the meeting was postponed, or they're not having the meeting at this time, or they're going to have the meeting at a later time. It means any of these. You need to do this paraphrase. So guys, I'm going to do something interactive with you. Please type your answers on the chat screen, in the chat screen. Listen carefully to what I'm going to do, okay? I'm going to read 2 short conversations to you. So here's what I'd like you to do. Listen to the opening lines to understand the topic of the conversation, and then listen to the response. And as soon as you hear the response, I want you to try to say what the speaker is saying in other words, okay? So as soon as you hear the response in the chat screen, I would like you to type your paraphrase of what the speaker is saying. What is the speaker saying in other words? What do you think the speaker is saying in other words? Okay? So here we go. I'm going to read the conversation. Listen carefully, and then I'll give you guys a few minutes to type in your responses. So the man says, "The coat you tried on was really nice and reasonably priced." The woman says, "I'd have bought it right away if they'd had it in my size." I'm going to repeat that one more time. "I'd have bought it right away if they'd had it in my size." So please type your answers online. What is she saying in other words? Okay, if there was the coat in her size, she would buy it immediately. Okay. It means that the woman would love to buy this coat, but she will not because they don't have it in her size. Okay, she would have bought the coat if it would fit her. She likes it. Okay, you guys are getting it. That's it. Let me give you the actual answer here. It's really interesting because you're very close. The actual answer on the TOEFL test was she didn't buy the coat. So when she said, "I would have bought it right away," this is a conditional sentence. And as soon as you hear it, you go, "Aha! I know that she didn't buy the coat." So you were right on, okay? So let's try this again. Let's do one more conversation and give you guys an opportunity to participate a little bit more. Okay, so here's another conversation. A woman says, I hope I'll be able to find Fred's sister at the bus station. All I know is that she's got brown hair and blue eyes. The man says, I could go with you. I met her a couple of years ago. I said, that's the response. I could go with you. I met her a couple of years ago. So what does the man mean in other words? What is he saying in other words? Yes, I see one answer here. He offers to accompany her. Yes, but why? You have to think about why. The man, he has already seen the woman, and it would be easier for him to recognize her. Okay, yes. I met her before, and I might know what she looks like. Yes, see, you're very close. You're very, very close. You're getting it. So thank you very much for all of your responses. Yes, the man knows what she looks like. You're absolutely correct. And let me give you the actual answer on the TOEFL test. The actual answer on the TOEFL test is he may be able to identify her. So you're very, very close. That's how you do it, guys. That's exactly how you do it. So thank you very much for your participation. Again, I'm going to say it again, this third step in the listening section where you try to paraphrase what the speaker says in other words, that's the key to this section of the TOEFL test. That's the key to part A in the listening section. So thank you very much. Once you've gone past that step, when you've done that paraphrase in your mind, what is the speaker saying in other words? Then you can listen to the question that the speaker says, and then you read the answer choices. It's very you have to read them only once. You can listen, you don't have time for more. You read the answer choices in this section only once, but carefully. So do it well, do it once, but do it well. Then you look at your answer sheet, find the number of the question, and then mark your answer choice A, B, C, or D. Now, they always tell you to find the number of the question and then mark your answer choice. It's very important in your answer sheet to first find the number of the question you're answering and then mark your answer choice A, B, C, or D. Because if you miss one question, then all of your answers will be askew. They'll be off, and it messes up your answer. So first the number of the question, then your answer choice A, B, C, or D. And then you get ready for the next conversation. Do not delay, because if you miss the opening lines of the conversation, you cannot understand the response very well, okay? So we're done with part A. Thank you for your participation. I hope that was helpful to you. Let's move on to to part B in the listening comprehension section. Part B is a little bit different. So let me read the directions to you, and then I'll give you a tip on what to do exactly. So here are the directions for part B in the listening comprehension section. Directions. In this part of the test, you will hear longer conversations. After each conversation, you will hear several questions. The conversations and questions will not be repeated. After you hear a question, read the 4 possible answers in your test book and choose the best answer. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Remember, you're not allowed to take notes or write in your test book. All right, guys, this is it. Longer conversations. So there's really nothing difficult here to understand. These are conversations that you can hear on campus or in a classroom, in the corridors. It's a student environment. So these are typical conversations you hear. Here are my tips for you. Number 1, for part B, when you are listening to these long conversations, visualize. Imagine that you are there, that the speakers are your friends, your colleagues, your classmates. This isn't just some recording that you're listening to. This is an actual conversation taking place right in front of you, and you are at the university listening to this. So I want you to try to imagine the speakers and the setting and the time of day and anything that you can imagine. I want you to make it 3D. I want you to make it familiar to you. So as you're listening to this conversation, the stress level should be down because this is an ordinary everyday situation. So when you do this, then you need to try to remember the details of the conversation, which you will do in a normal setting. If this was real life, you would have no problem remembering these details. You have a hard time remembering them because it's a test and you're nervous, okay? But if you visualize, if you imagine that you're there and these are your friends talking, it's a lot easier to remember the details of the conversation. Now, about the details, guys, it's like taking notes. Now, I'm going to say it again. You are not allowed to take notes, but it's like taking notes. If you were to write down quickly some of the pieces of information in the conversation, you would write down who, the people, when, the time, where, the place that is mentioned in the conversation, why, reason, why they're going or why they're doing something, how, are they going by plane, are they going to walk, are they going individually or together in groups. So in the longer conversations, if you hear any dates or names or places, any specific numbers, put them in your head, write them down in your head, because these are the details that will be important for answering the questions. And that's it. That's the best advice I can give you in the short time I have for part B. Moving on, guys, very quickly to part C in the listening comprehension section. Let me read the directions to you so you'll never have to do it again, all right? Directions. In this part of the test, you will hear several talks. After each talk, you will hear some questions. The talks and questions will not be repeated. After you hear a question, read the 4 possible answers in your test book and choose the best answer. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. All right, there's not much to explain here. These talks are the typical talks you will hear as a university student. It's a presentation, it's part of a class, it's a lecture, very typical, nothing unusual, very commonplace. So they're not going to be high-tech. So here's my tip for you for part C. Again, visualize. What I want you guys to try to do in part C is to pretend this is real life. Just imagine that you are a university student and the speaker is talking to you. This is your professor speaking to you. This is your coordinator talking to you. This is your counselor addressing you, okay? So pretend it's you and you're there. You're an actual university student. And again, I have to say, tip number 2, you have to remember the details. So here's the tip, okay? Here's what I mean, remember the details. If you were in class, then this is the information you would write down, okay? So the details that you would actually write down if you were taking notes, remember, you're not allowed, but we're imagining, then these are the details you have to remember, the details you would write down. So you have to commit to memory any detail you would write down if you were allowed to take notes. So guys, that's it. We're done with the listening section. We have to move on quickly so we don't run out of time. I'll answer questions quickly after we're done, okay? So moving on to section 2. Remember, this is the grammar section. This is structure and written expression. So let me read the directions to you for questions 1 through 15. Questions 1 through 15 are incomplete sentences. Incomplete sentences. Beneath each sentence, you will see 4 words or phrases marked A, B, C, and D. Choose the 1 word or phrase that best completes the sentence. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. So guys, you have 15 sentences with something missing. Basically, that's it. And then you have to identify the 1 part of the sentence that is missing. So here's the tip. There's really only 1 tip, okay? That goes with a lot of explanation, but I have 1 tip for you for questions 1 through 15. And that's identify familiar grammatical structures. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Identify familiar grammatical structures. Think, when you look at the sentence first, when you see the sentence with the blank, think of what is missing grammatically. Let me put an example on the screen for you. Think of what is missing grammatically. Not the exact words that are missing, but the grammar construction, okay? Because listen, the part that is missing is 1 part of a bigger construction that is identifiable, which means that when you fill in the blank, you form a familiar, recognizable grammar structure, okay? So it's not just what's missing, it's what's missing that I see as a part of a bigger construction, Okay, so there's a couple of examples here. We'll go over those very quickly. Here's one example. I'm going to read it to you. Blank is helping to break new ground in drug research. Blank is helping to break new ground in drug research. Now, can you tell right away what's missing? Not the actual words. We don't know. We couldn't possibly know what the actual words are. But can we figure out grammatically what's missing? Okay. Since we're running out of time, guys, answer the question out loud in front of your computer screens, okay? Because I need to go over this quickly with you because I'm sorry, we're running out of time. So obviously the subject is missing. We have a verb, is helping. What's the subject of that verb? Now remember what I said about the subject and the verbs? They always go, somebody said subject. Oh, you guys are good. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. They're doing it. Thank you, guys. You're absolutely correct. Here's the subject of this sentence, the increasing use of the computer. It's a perfect noun phrase that functions as a subject. Thank you. Let's do a quick another one, okay? The earthworm is a worm, blank, in moist, warm soil in many geographical areas. This one is a little bit harder, but you can give it a try. Can you tell what is absent, what's missing grammatically? The earthworm is a worm, blank. So, maybe you'll get this one too. You guys are smart. Yeah. Okay. An adjective. Very good. Yes, something like an adjective to describe what kind of worm this is, right? Very good. Okay, very good. I have one answer here, and you're absolutely close. What's missing is either a relative clause, a relative pronoun. Very good. Yes, 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 yes. That's exactly how you do it, guys. You kind of know what's coming because you understand the language. We need a relative clause to describe the worm or a participle phrase. And here we go. That's the answer on the actual TOEFL test. Yes, which leaves somebody try to actually guess the actual words. Very brave of you. Okay. Yes, we are missing a participle. We are missing a word that describes the worm. And here's another example, but I'm going to do this one because we're running out of time. Beneath the streets of a modern city, blank of walls, columns, cables, pipes, and tunnels required to satisfy the needs of its inhabitants. Now, when I read this sentence, I know that I need a subject and a verb in the sentence. Beneath the streets of a modern city is part of a verb phrase. It's not the subject. So I know that what's missing in the blank is a subject-verb relationship. Not only that, it has to be inverted. You'll actually see a verb-subject relationship because I'm familiar with the grammatical construction called fronting. Fronting exists in network. All right, guys, thank you very much for your participation. Moving on to the second part of this section, the structure and written expression section. These are questions 16 through 40. Again, let me read the directions to you. In questions 16 through 40, each sentence has 4 underlined words or phrases. The 4 underlined parts of the sentence are marked A, B, C, and D. Identify the 1 underlined word or phrase that must be changed in order for the sentence to be correct. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. So, guys, basically, you have a sentence with an error, and the error is somewhere in the underlined parts of the sentence, and you have to identify that error based on the grammar rules that you're familiar with, okay? So I have one tip for you. Again, identify familiar grammatical structures. It's the same advice, so you don't have to do anything different here. You have to be able to identify grammatical structures that you know the rules for. For example, it could be the tense. The tense is wrong, or the voice. It's passive instead of active, or the other way around. It could be a verb pattern. You know, I hope to do instead of, it says hope doing is hope to do. It could be a relative clause or conditional sentence. It could be something with the articles, but it has to be a familiar grammatical construction. And guys, of course, you have to find the error. So you're looking, where's the error? Where's the error? But you have to ask yourselves one more question. What is the grammar rule? You can identify the error. You can say, I think it's this, I think it's that. But if you cannot identify the rule, it's going to be very difficult for you to be sure of the right answer. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. The outermost part of the sun's atmosphere is very hot, that its gases continually expand away from the sun. Now, let me do this. Let me show you what I see. The outermost part of the sun's atmosphere sounds perfectly correct. This is a perfectly formed noun phrase. There's nothing wrong with it. It's very hot sounds okay, but when you read the rest of it, very hot that, I know a construction that sounds like this. So something, that something. I know that construction. It's a construction I use to explain reason and result, cause and effect. So, but it's not very hot that, very something that. It's so something that. And I know the mistake is in B because I identified the construction. Continually expand is okay. Adverbs and verbs go perfectly together. There's nothing wrong with this. Its gases, its refers of the suns. So it's the right pronoun. There's nothing else wrong. But so hot that, that's the rule. Another example, Nathaniel Hawthorne often complained how few material his life provided for his fiction. Okay, it's not few material, it's little material, because material is an uncountable noun and we use it with a different quantifier. So moving on real quick, guys, because we're running out of time. Unfortunately, let's move on to the reading comprehension section. Here are the directions. In this section, you will hear several passages. Each one is followed by several questions about it. For questions 1 through 50, you are to choose the one best answer, A, B, C, or D, to each question. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Now, this is a good time for me to tell you about to address the second poll question that we asked you. Is it necessary to read? Do you have to actually? Are you required to read the whole passage before you start answering any questions? Now, very simple answer. You do not have to read every word of the passage to start answering questions. No, you do not have to read every word of the passage. However, and this is my tip, you have to familiarize yourselves with the reading, with the passage. You have to familiarize yourselves with it. You can't start answering questions about something you don't know. So it's like this. Here's my tips, okay? You survey first. Now, never mind what survey means exactly. I'll tell you what it means. It doesn't matter if you use this term or another term, but it's like this, guys. It's like seeing an unfamiliar face for the first time. What do? Well, you study its characteristic features. You look at, eye color, hair, eyebrows, proportions of the face. You study that face. Well, it's the same thing with the text you see for the first time. You have to study its characteristic features. You have to spot the identifying characteristics of the passage as a whole. Here's what I mean. You can actually learn a lot about the text without reading every single word, okay? So here are the identifying characteristics of a passage. First, the paragraphs. You don't have to count them, but think of paragraphs as aspects of a topic. So if you have a one-paragraph passage, it discusses one aspect of a topic. If you have a 3-paragraph passage, then you have probably 2 or 3 aspects of a topic that are discussed. It's a little more complex. So the paragraphs mean things. Then you'll very easily spot words that are in bold or italic. Why are those important? Because they are terms or names of works, artistic works or literary works. And immediately you see them right away because they catch your eye. So they're hard to miss. But when you see them, you already have some information about the passage, that it contains terms and names of artistic or literary works. Another characteristic feature of a passage are the dashes, colons, and clusters of commas. Now, I know students typically ignore punctuation marks. I encourage you to identify them, to see them actually, to learn to identify them very quickly. Why are they important? Guys, listen. Dashes and colons usually signal explanations, clarifications and definitions, which are information that you need, and there's going to be a question about those. Clusters of comments usually implies lists of some sort. There's a list of something, and there's going to be a question about that list of something. Then other identifying features: dates, names, numbers in capital letters. You have to allow your eye to see them before you start reading anything, because dates, if you see a lot of dates in the passage, it means the passage gives you a history of something. It gives you a timeline of some sort. If you see names, then it's about people. It's a story that involves characters, people. Okay, numbers give specific details, and there's usually a question about these specific details. Capital letters. All of these, dates, names, numbers, and capital letters, help you understand the content of the passage, what's in the text, okay? Also, another characteristic feature, contrast words. They usually signal main points. Are you kidding me? They're super important. And they stand out because they're usually separated with a comma. Of course, I have to mention topic sentences. Topic sentences are the first sentences of each paragraph usually. They help you see what topics are discussed in the passage. They help you understand the organization of the text and the main points. So, folks, listen, without reading much, just by noticing the characteristic features of a passage, they stand out. You will learn about the text more than you know. Then, okay, you can start answering questions. So, no, you don't have to read every word, but yes, you have to study the passage, become a little familiar with before you attempt any questions. And second, my second tip, you have to learn to scan, which means you have to use keywords in the question to find the information you need in the passage. And listen, to answer each question, always find evidence in the text. In class, when I watch my students do the TOEFL test, when they read a question, if they don't immediately look at the text, they're doing it wrong. So they'll get it from me, okay? For every question you answer, you have to find evidence in the text. You find the evidence using scanning, okay? So basically, I'm done with the TOEFL test. My final pieces of advice: what do you do now in the days before the test? I know you don't have all that much time, but there are some things that you can do that are not difficult to do, okay? Number one, go to the official ets.org website, and you can use the free materials that are published there to practice for the TOEFL test. So please head to that website if you haven't already, and use their preparation materials that are free and accessible online. Number two, try to practice paraphrasing. You did fabulously here. I was really excited to see your answers. Practice paraphrasing. And listen, here's just a tip, okay? You can use your school books. Dig out your English books. You're all, probably most of you are still in high school. You're studying English. If you are not studying now, then you studied before. Find your school books. Find a good reading. Read a sentence and try to say it in different words. Read another sentence and you can do this with friends. You can group, you can have study buddies, and you can help each other paraphrase. Another things you can do, I was going to give you some examples here, but we don't have time for this. Number three, here's another thing you can do between now and the TOEFL test. Do selected grammar exercises. Guys, when I say selected, I mean don't do just anything, okay? You need to choose from topics that you have discussed already with your teachers lately. We're talking in the last year or so, okay? Or you are discussing at school right now. So I would recommend buying a good grammar book. I don't recommend the internet because it's a jungle out there. You don't know what you're getting. It's better to get a good grammar book appropriate for your level, and then do extra grammar exercises on the grammar that you're discussing with your teachers. Here's another piece of advice, something you can do between now and the TOEFL test. Read magazine articles, okay? Magazine articles are accessible, and they're short, and you can read them at one sitting. So it's all very manageable. And you don't study vocabulary. Please do not study vocabulary between now and the TOEFL test. That's not going to help, okay? It's not about the vocabulary. It's about other things. And finally, my final tip, my super important final tip, is come to the English Language Institute at the American University in Bulgaria and enroll in the UP program. We're waiting for you. We'll teach you. Everything you saw in this presentation is part of the program. We love teaching. We'd love to have you. You'll become a part of the AUBG community real quick. And then it will be much easier when you're an actual AUBG student, a regular AUBG student. You'll feel like you're at home already. Okay, it's a wonderful program. So, we have a couple of questions. Okay. Oh, hi. Are you still? Okay. All right. So, guys, there were a few questions at the beginning here of the webinar. How do you assess different exercises from different sections? So I guess you mean, are they all equal? Yes. The answer is yes. Somebody here, I think, asked what is the total number of points that you can get. It's 677 on the paper-based TOEFL test. The highest score is 677. You need 550 to become a regular AUBG student. 677, each section gets the same amount of points. So the reading doesn't give you more value. It doesn't have more value than the grammar, or the listening doesn't have more value than the reading, okay? Each section has the same amount of value. I hope I'm saying this right, okay? So my advice, ace the grammar. I think that's the easiest to do, okay? And it will compensate for any mistakes you made in the listening or in the reading. Okay, so the points are divided equally between the three sections. Okay, you're not allowed to take notes. We've established that. Is there any type of specific structure on the writing section? Well, we don't have a writing section here. I don't know if you, are you asking about essay writing? So there is no writing on the paper-based TOEFL test. There's listening, grammar, and reading. So you do not have to write a TOEFL essay, not for this format of the test. Is this TOEFL test paper-based? Okay, the institutional TOEFL test that you're registered for, I guess, that you're about to take, is paper-based or paper-delivered. It's a very different format from the internet-based TOEFL test. They're very different. They're different tests, basically, all right? So the test that I've talked about is the paper-based TOEFL test, okay? There's no computer involved. Do we have to write an essay? No. No, you do not have to write an essay for the paper-based TOEFL test. No, unfortunately. I wish, you know, I love your essays. I would love to read some of them, but no essay. Okay, so if you have any other questions, when will we receive the details on where and what time the test will take place in our cities? I think you address your country coordinators.
We'll receive an email.
Oh, you will receive an email next week, and you will have exact information on where to go. I don't know if you guys know what you're supposed to carry with you. Number 2 pencil, HB, or number 2 pencils. My advice, carry 3 very well sharpened pencils. Bring a nice eraser and your ID card. So pencils, erasers. If you want, you can bring a sharpener, but bring 3 well-sharpened pencils, HB or number 2 pencils, and your ID card. Do we need IELTS test 2 for applying at AUBG? Yes, IELTS is an acceptable test for application at the university, but I don't know anything about IELTS. When will we get the answer of the test? If we're a winner. It takes about 2 weeks for the paper-based TOEFL test to be processed. So about 2 weeks, I would say. Within 2 weeks, you should get your results. Do you get a certificate? Well, it's not enough that you're accepted at AUBG. No, you do not get a certificate. You get a score sheet. It has your name and your score on it. So yes, I don't know, but it's not called a certificate. What is the total number of points? 677, and they're divided equally between the 3 sections of the TOEFL test. Observe the details of the reading. Observe the details of the reading. Well, yes. I mean, it's like when you open your page and first look at the text, look at its characteristic features because they stand out. I mean, they'll poke your eye out. All of the things I mentioned, the paragraphs, the words in bold and italics, they're so easy to see. And they speak, they tell you something, the specific numbers. Yes, familiarize yourself with the text, just like you study an unfamiliar face. You look at the things that stand out. How many seconds do I have to identify an answer and to fill a gap in the listening comprehension? All right, now about the listening comprehension, you don't have much time. Okay, you have a few seconds. Basically, here's how it works, okay? You have enough time to read each answer once. You don't have time to read them and reread them and go back and forth. So my advice, start with answer choice A, read it once, or start reading it. Sometimes you don't even have to read the end of it. Sometimes it's very obvious it's the wrong answer. So start reading and you work your way down each of the answer choices. You read them once. You look down, mark your answer, look up. You have to get into a rhythm. You do not have much time. You certainly don't have time to, oh, I wonder if it's A, maybe it's B. No, wait, A, B, A, B. No, you don't have time to do that. Read them once, discard them, look down, mark your answer, move on. Aren't we going to take TWE test along with the TOEFL test? No, the test of written English is not necessary. You do not take it. So you will not be required to write your typical familiar TOEFL essay. So no, you're not taking the TWE. When should we expect to get further instructions for the test? For instance, what our registration number is, etc. From what I understand, you will all get an email. You probably have a contact person, somebody that spoke to you in the first place. If you have any contact information for that person, then you address them with that question. But from what I understand, you will all receive an email with specific instructions on where to go and what to do. So RT Beselica is asking me, where is the speaking section? Are you asking about this presentation? Because we covered all parts of the, speaking section. Okay. RT, there is no speaking on the paper-based TOEFL test. No speaking. The speaking section is part of the internet-based TOEFL test. Okay, this discussion here, this webinar is about their paper-based. And guys, no speaking. You do not have to speak. Sorry. Yes, definitely. I said it in my presentation. The better you score, the better your level of English, the better you score, the better your chances to get some sort of financial help. And guys, you can impress a lot of people with your level of English. And I tell you, the TOEFL test is a widely recognized test. If you do well on the TOEFL test, it will be recognized by a lot of institutions, especially AUBG. We want you to come here, of course. Listen, blow their minds away, okay? If you do well on the TOEFL test, of course, they're going to want you to be a student at the American University because you've impressed them, okay? Another question, are we going to have a questions sheet and an answer sheet? No. Yes, okay, I'm sorry. What am I talking about? Okay, listen, here's how you work. You're going to have a test booklet. In the test booklet are the questions on the listening. That's where the sentences are for the structured and written expression section, and that's where the passages are for the reading. That's a booklet. Separately, you will be given an answer sheet. Only one answer sheet. And on that answer sheet, you fill out some ovals or circles with your name, and that's where you also fill in some circles with your answers. So yes, you're going to have a test booklet and a separate answer sheet. You cannot use this TOEFL test, the paper-based TOEFL test, to apply anywhere else other than the American University in Bulgaria. This is the only institution that's going to receive your scores, and no, you cannot use them to apply anywhere else. So, I mean, that's why this test is compliments to the AUBG. So, we want you to come here. If you have both the IBT TOEFL scores and the institutional TOEFL score, are you going to find an average between the two scores, or institutional TOEFL scores are much more important? I would say that the admissions office, the admissions officers are going to look at your higher score because you're obviously capable of doing well, doing better than the lower score. Okay, so I would guess that they are going to consider you a better score, and the more scores, the better. And so I think that answers the question.
Let me chime in. My name is Anatoly Cherny, the Assistant Director of Admissions. Some of these questions are better suited to the admissions counselor, so I'll talk on their behalf. If we have more than 2 scores, we reserve the right to average them because people start playing a game and taking lots of tests, but we already know they know English. And TOEFL is just one fraction of your application package. Yes, it's important. Yes, your financial package will be dependent on how much you get on the TOEFL score, but it's not the only thing we're looking at. Yes, it's important, work on it, but don't rely on it as the only salvation that you have. Right?
Yeah, I'm glad he's here to tell you that.
Okay, sorry, I've been hiding behind just trying to help with the technicalities.
Yeah.
Again, you will receive an email next week with the specifics about the test, where to go, and then a reminder a few days before the test.
I have some questions.
Okay,
I
here
can
are
answer.
some more questions for you.
Somebody said, do the examples that I gave in the presentation, are they like on the test? Yes, these are actual sentences that I used from actual TOEFL tests. I didn't come up with those. They're from actual TOEFL tests that I've taken. Now, granted, some of the sentences are going to be easier than the ones I showed. I tried to show you examples that are easier, as well as examples that are a little bit harder. So like the one where the subject was missing is one of the easier ones. And the one where you had to do fronting, like you have to figure out that the verb and the subject would be inverted. Beneath the streets of the city exists the network, okay? That was one of the harder ones. But like I said, the TOEFL test spans from B1, which is intermediate level, to C1, which is upper intermediate level. So you need to be at the higher level to do well on all parts of the test, to do well with the easier ones and the difficult ones.
Okay, it depends on the specific test center on how they will turn on the sound, but the rules say that it has to be a DVD player or a cassette tape player and not a computer. But it doesn't matter. It has to be loud and clear, and we'll take care of it. Okay. We are not allowed to take any notes.
But are we allowed to circle our answers in the book? Oh, no, please. Do not write in your booklets. Do not. Don't, okay? You only write your answers in your answer sheet. Any mark you leave in your booklet may be considered an act of cheating, and your scores can be canceled. So please don't take any chances. Do not write in your... The only place you write is on your answer sheet when you're circling your answer.
Just the answer sheet.
Just the answer sheet. Please, please, please.
When do we have to fill the answers on the answer sheet in the listening section?
Immediately.
As you hear the question, you circle
it. You hear the question, you look down, you read the answers once carefully, eliminating the ones you know are wrong, and as soon as you choose your answer, you mark it down and you move on immediately.
Okay, here's an interesting question. On the 24th of January, we'll have only paper-based test. Yes, this is correct. The institutional test is a paper-based, and that's the only thing that will be offered on the 24th of January in a test center that you have registered for. So if I don't succeed getting in the AUBG, can I use my score for applying in other universities? This was already answered. Yeah. Probably not. If the university... If you negotiated with some other university, probably, but most universities will not accept this. If you don't succeed in getting the top score for TOEFL, you can always come for a couple of months to the preparatory program.
Yes, we
Boryana.
It's a wonderful program. I mean, I would send my kids to that program, okay? It's wonderful.
There is no better way of learning English than focusing on it in our English Language Institute.
No, it's we love to teach, so we'd love to have you.
It seems the format is easier than IBT. Which one is more profitable in case of getting scholarship? Well, both of them are profitable depending on your score.
What impresses the admissions office more? I would say the IBT, but I don't know.
IBT is more impressive, of course, but they're pretty much equal. We know if you have an IBT of something, you probably will get a PBT of something. So
Did you get that?
They're pretty much equal.
Something is,
yeah. We have a conversion table. And yeah, I know I might not be able to answer this, but can you give us some tips for the interview? And there will be a webinar about the interviews.
Not me.
This is a question for later, but thanks for reminding.
Tips for the interview.
Where can I make similar online tests in order to practice? We'll send a link. How many times has each section? Well, it was already mentioned, and you can check it on the ETS website.
Yeah. That was in the presentation.
Okay, I submitted my application in December and there I registered for the test. Do I need to register again? No, you don't. If you have submitted your online application with the correct test center and you're eligible, we'll check and send you an email next week that yes, you have registered successfully. Okay. And if we haven't answered your questions, please apologize. How many points do we need to score for 100% scholarship? We do get that quite a lot. I wish I had an answer to that.
677.
But even if you have points? A perfect score on TOEFL, we're not looking only at TOEFL. So I cannot give you points in TOEFL for which you would get a full scholarship.
The higher the better.
The higher the better. Other bits and pieces of your application also matter. Your interview, your grades in school. We also look at the recommendations, essay, and your CV. Overall, we look at the whole package. But TOEFL and grades in school are pretty much the more weightier bits of your application. But none of them carry 100% scholarship. Okay, in the application, I mentioned that I am eligible to take this institutional test, but the question is if I have plan to take an English proficiency test in the future. I mentioned no, because I don't plan to take some other tests except TOEFL PBT.
You'll still be invited.
Yeah, you are invited. Yeah, as long as you don't have another already done, ready, good TOEFL. Okay, if you have further questions, you're welcome to continue the chat in Facebook group. We'll be answering questions there. Thank you very much for your participation. It was a lot of fun. Thanks,
yes, it was a lot of fun. I don't know. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but
I apologize for
no, we apologize.
You're the speaker.
I hope you guys got it. Watch it again, okay? Watch it again.
Yeah, you'll be hanging out in YouTube for a month while you're preparing, and then we'll probably take it down. And we'll send links to more resources with the email for your registration.
Maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, we could do it again. Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Bye.
Good luck on the TOEFL. We really wish you
we want you. We want you. Impress us.
Do very well.
Yes, do well.
Good luck.
Bye.